Hey guys, I made this shimmer pad on my Fractal AX8 over here. I've used it for a couple of years now, and it's kind of a fun little tool to throw in the mix every once in a while. I designed it not so much as an effect on an instrument per se, but I kind of wanted it to be something that sort of stands apart from the instrument that I'm playing, kind of as a disembodied, extra track that's happening, but it's happening live. And so that's really what this is. As you can tell, it reacts to what I'm playing, but it really exists in the background and doesn't really interfere with necessarily what I'm playing. It doesn't really matter if I'm playing fast or not. And so it's kind of a nice thing to throw in to a chorus or a bridge on a song, especially if I'm playing in a smaller setting like a trio setting or something like that. I don't use it very often, but it's a fun thing to throw in there. You can also kind of use it for sound design or like film scoring or anything like that. You could just like take the direct signal out of the mix like this. Instant film score. Lots of things you can do with it. You could sort of play it on a track and just have it live in the background. And usually, what I do in a live setting is I'll send that signal, that part of the signal, to a different set of outputs on my AX8 to the front of house, and then the sound person can do whatever they want to do with it and sort of mix it into where it makes sense to them. And so I thought I'd walk you through a preset, show you what elements this sound is made up of. It's really just three very simple elements: a filter, and a multi-delay, and a reverb. So let me show you what's happening here. As you can tell here, I've got two signal paths. One is my dry signal below, and the upper row here is the shimmer pad. These volume blocks right here are just acting as on-off switches for both the direct signal and for the shimmer pad. Let me just kind of go through them one by one. I'm going to turn the reverb off. I'm going to turn the multi-delay off. And so all we're left with here up top is a filter. So just a very mid-rangey sound, and that's because this is as you can tell here, a bandpass filter, meaning the low end and the high end get cut off from the signal, and all you're left with is the mid-range. And I find that works really well, feeding into the rest of that signal chain to keep the note kind of pure, and there's not a lot of fret noise, hand noise, as well as low-end rumble to clutter things up, because it tends to make things really messy if you leave those in. So just a simple bandpass filter. The order I set to fourth order rather than second order, meaning it's just a more extreme version of the filter, and the low end and the high end get cut off more aggressively this way. The frequency I have set around 300 hertz. Tends to work well for bass, but it also works well for guitar, I find. Again, it sort of leaves the pure note that you can then feed into the rest of the signal chain. I set the Q at around 0.4 or a little bit lower sometimes. You can experiment with that. There's different ways to do that. I do engage the low cut as well, again, to really make sure that none of the low end of my bass gets through. And my level is set at about 5 dB, feeding into the rest of the chain. Next up is the multi-delay. I'll turn the filter off and just the multi-delay on. Sounds like this. So just a mess of pitch shifting and delays. This is the plex shift delay, and a plex shift is a multi-delay with 4 separate delay lines that also use pitch shifting. And so as you can tell, they're all shifted up. I'll just kind of go through the main elements here. On the first master page here, the direction is set to reverse. So you can tell here, takes all these little audio snippets, flips them around. and that tends to spread things out a little more. Same with these controls right here, the diffusion, the input diffusion, diffusion time, and crossfade. I have them all set to max. And again, for the same purpose, it just like spreads everything out and makes it less about the note and more just about the overall sound. The delay time I've set to 1 second. And let's see. Again, I'm applying a low cut and a high cut. It's probably not strictly necessary because I have that going on in the filter as well. These right here, I have them mostly set to 100%, and the master detune I have set to 50%. Again, experiment. This next page here is sort of where the real business happens as far as the pitch shifting goes. So you have 4 sections, 1, 2, 3, and 4, meaning 4 different delay lines that all have their own level of pitch shifting and panning and volume and delay times and all that stuff. As you can tell here, 3 of these I have set to 1 octave up, but then with different panning and detuning and delay times. And then the 4th one I have set to 2 octaves up, meaning 24 semitones. And that tends to sort of give you a clean level of pitch shifting. All these other values, meaning the delay times and the detune values, the levels, the pan settings, I just kind of set them all over the place to create sort of like a wide soundscape. But they're fairly arbitrary, and there's lots of different ways you can set those for different sounds. The Docker page I don't really deal with, so anyway, that's it for the multi-delay. And lastly, here, let me turn off the delay, and then I'll turn on the reverb. It sounds like this. It's probably kind of hard to hear on bass, but it's a really long delay. It's the deep space one. It's a very cavernous sounding delay with the mix all the way up. And speaking of which, just looping back to the multi-delay real quick, the mix here also all the way up, just to create maximum sort of diffusion and not have any direct signal in there. Very important. As far as the reverb goes, like I said, the deep space, a nice long reverb. I've got the time set to 4 seconds. Size is at 65. The echo density, you can experiment with that. If you set it lower to like 2 or something like that, you'll save some resources. You'll save some CPU power. I find that 4 is a nice compromise. You know what I mean? It doesn't take up too many resources, but still sounds nice and clean. So if you put them all together, here, let me just turn this off. Again, this is just a filter. Combined with the multi-delay. And then lastly, the reverb. So it's really subtle, and as you can tell, I can play fast runs, and it barely even makes it through that combination of the filter and the multi-delay and the reverb. And it's really only when I play a long note that it sort of comes through that signal chain. And again, if I turn the direct signal back on, I can kind of play whatever I want, and it kind of just follows along in the background, and so I don't have to expend too much energy thinking about like recalibrating my playing so that pad doesn't sound weird or anything like that. Just kind of lives in the background, and that's where I want it. One other fun thing that I've done with this reverb is, as you can see right here, there's this hold switch, and the hold switch, all it does is if you engage it, it takes whatever reverb is going on at the time and then just keeps that going for as long as you let it. I've assigned that to a control switch, and as you can tell here, that control switch is right here, switch 8. This is the on-off switch for the actual shimmer pad. So going back here, I'll show you how it works. I could be playing. And if I like what's going on right here, I'll just hit that control switch, and then that part of the sound keeps going forever and ever and ever, and I can play the clean sound underneath. Until I turn it off. Then it disappears, and then picks back up whatever you are playing, right? And so that's kind of a fun way to not have this react constantly to what you're playing, but every once in a while you're like, oh, I like this particular sound, hit the switch. So that's pretty nifty, and can come in handy. You know what I mean? You find something you like, lock it in, and then it goes for as long as you like. Yeah, so I think that's about it. I'll post this patch on the Fractal forums, and go nuts with it. Hope it does something for you. Hope you have a little fun with it. Obviously, feel free to ask me any questions, and thanks for watching. I will see you on the next one. Bye.